This is Kevin Bing. I'm the president of the Journal Square Community Association. Good Saturday morning to you. Welcome to the November meeting of the Journal Square Community Association. We have a lot of really good speakers today. Basically all around the theme of sustainability and open space and adding green space to our community. So it's a very exciting conversation. I also have on the line Bill Armbruster, who is the chair of our Green Committee. You'll be hearing from him today. He'll have a few questions. Anu is not with us this month, but we thank her for her help. With that, let me get into the business of the meeting. We were not able to send out formal minutes for last month's meeting. However, I'm going to ask by unanimous consent that we use the audio video transcription video that's uploaded to Facebook from the October meeting in lieu of minutes and approve those as our minutes. If you wish to raise an objection, send us an email, hello@jsqca.com. If you'd like to contact me or any of us for any other reason, hello@jsqca.com is the best way to get in touch with us. With that, I'm going to bring on Mia Skenga, our treasurer, who's going to give a treasurer's report. Good morning, Mia.
Good morning. How are you, Kevin?
Very good. How are you today?
Good, good. All right, not much has changed. As of the end of October, we had $1,477.39 as our general fund. For the Bergen Arches, $30,245.03. And Bergen Square Day, which is being postponed to next year, $5,460.33, which gives us a total of $37,182.75. We have about 110 members, and now is the time to renew your membership for 2021. And we hope you do, please.
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to renew your membership, the place to do that is JSQCA.com. There's a membership form right on there. You can sign up, tell us what committees you're interested in. And Mia, correct me if I'm wrong, but the dues now are going to apply for the full 2021 year.
Absolutely. And we have since like the beginning of September. So we had a few new members in September. That'll apply for next year as well.
Well, that's great. Thank you to the new members for joining.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Mia.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And with that, we're going to move on to our first speaker, Kate Lawrence. She is the Sustainability Director for the City of Jersey City, and she's going to talk about her work with JC Make It Green. Kate, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well.
Great. So first, I just wanted to introduce the Office of Sustainability for people who aren't aware that it exists. It's started in 2018 within the City of Jersey City. And it's an office under the business administrator, but we work closely with other departments and divisions throughout the city, including the Division of Planning and Forestry, recycling through sanitation, and other departments within the administration as well. So if you ever want to know what sort of the official things that are happening through the city's Office of Sustainability, remember that our logo or our tagline is JC Make It Green. And we have a website. So you may find information about our initiatives through the city website if you go to the sustainability page, but we actually have a much better website that we created to make it easy for us to share information with the public. So if you go to jcmakeitgreen.org, you'll be able to find a lot of amazing information about our initiatives and about the city's initiatives for sustainability. So yes, great. Kevin just pulled that up. So that's the front page. And you'll see at the top, there's a bunch of tabs that will give you more information about the initiatives that we're working on. And then there's also the Take Action row. There's a few items there, and the Learn row, underneath the main picture. Yeah, so there's information if you're looking for information about initiatives that we're working on. For example, if you're interested in our climate action plan, you can find more, and don't click on it yet because we'll go there in a minute, Kevin. But the composting initiative, our municipal tree mapping project, our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, various projects you can link there, and you can also find them under the tabs at the top. And then on the right-hand side is our calendar, if you want to know what's going on. And then we also have links to our Instagram posts and our Twitter feed so that you can kind of find out everything there. So if you have any questions about any of our initiatives, I highly recommend this website. If you go to the resources page, Kevin, would you mind just clicking on that? That will bring you to pretty much every resource that's related to sustainability and resiliency within Jersey City, including initiatives that are done by other offices. So for example, the planning department's resiliency master plan, adaptation plan can be found here very easily if that's something that you're looking for. And then stormwater resources. We also have information about the plastic bag ban and, you know, maps data. And then also at the very bottom, the press releases from the mayor about different initiatives that we're working on. So, all right, so if you don't mind going back to the homepage and then clicking on the, well, actually you can show a different, yeah, so right there, participate in Jersey City Climate Action 2020. That would be great. Yeah, you can click there too, might take you. Yeah, so some of you may know that the city committed in 2015 to an 80% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And that's in keeping with the state goal as well. So that's for city emissions citywide. We also in 2018 joined the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. So basically what that does is that is a commitment. You can see information about that on the left-hand side. That's a commitment, a global commitment that is in key. So we're going to be working on the same protocols and standards as cities around the world. And we basically committed to doing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory that is the same as everybody else's. That has the same standards so we can compare apples to apples. So we completed our greenhouse gas emissions in 2019. We also committed through that to doing a climate action plan, which we're working on right now, and completing a risk inventory and vulnerability assessment, which we're also working on. So we should have those all done by the end of 2021. So our climate action plan, it started in the fall of 2019. We started with outreach. We had a public meeting to introduce the plan, you know, why climate change is a problem, what the city has done so far, and what are some ideas for reducing our emissions. So we created working groups across 4 different sectors. We had one for energy, transportation and land use, waste, and equity. And those working groups are made up of people who are volunteering or people that we asked to be part of it, who have a particular perspective. They're, members of our community on that topic area. And those groups met at least 4 times, and they came up with a number of action items, and they went through it several times and provided feedback to us, and we provided more information to them. We have 60 action items now that we have drafted. You can find all of that information on the climate action page. There's actually 2 subpages. There's one on the working groups, and then you can find one that's the public outreach. So the climate change one talks about what the issues are in Jersey City, and also has resources or links to other resources that talk about climate change. The one that talks about the public outreach has information about what we've done so far. And then there's the one on the working groups, which has all the meeting minutes and has all of the draft items. So we did get delayed in our initial timeline because of COVID, but we're still on track to have a draft completed by the end of this year. We're going to post it online. A draft of everything, including the action items. We're going to post that online for public comment by the end of this year. We did have public meetings in last fall, and we did have some public meetings in the spring, but most of them were canceled. So we did receive your feedback via 2 surveys that we had. So keep an eye out for notice about the draft plan so that you can provide additional commentary and feedback on that. You can sign up on our website for our email listserv, because we do send out sort of a quarterly newsletter, and then we're also going to be sending out links to the draft when people can so that they can add their comments. And then I also just wanted to quickly go through some other initiatives that we have in place. So as you may know, the city is looking to be ready for the revolution, or the revolution in cars, which is going to be electric vehicles. They are coming. So we're looking to switch over the vehicles within our city fleet, as well as provide charging stations to the public so that people can have easy access to charging stations if they wanted to make the switch to electric vehicles. So we already had a public station on Marin, which is right by City Hall. We've added another one. We've also added one near the City Hall Annex, near Bethune Center at Fulton and MLK. And we also have a public station at Riverview. We've added a few more stations for our fleet vehicles, and the mayor has made a commitment to 100% of all new eligible fleet purchases by 2030 to be electric. We are looking to add more public stations in the coming year. We're using capital funding, but we're also using grant funding from the DEP. The city Office of Sustainability and other city departments is also working on planting trees this fall. So there'll be over 330 trees, which brings the total for the year over 500. This is through CDBG funding as well as capital funding. The Office of Sustainability has also been working with Montclair State University and their green team, as well as NJCU, to accurately inventory our street trees with GIS and get a comprehensive inventory of our trees. We all are working on completing that within the next year. So that's something that is very helpful for our city foresters, so we can better manage our trees. We're also, the City Office of Sustainability is working on energy efficiency upgrades to over 20 buildings within the city so that we can meet our climate goals internally and also reduce costs. And we are doing Resilient New Jersey grant program. It just started, so this will be a 1.5-year program. It's regional. It's with DEP funding. It's with the cities of Newark, Hoboken, Bayonne, Hudson County, as well as the partners Hopes and Ironbound Community Corporation. So that is going to have a massive outreach component that will be starting, I think, like early to mid 2021. It will be looking to further all of the projects that have already done around resiliency within Jersey City, but looking at more regional perspective and also gearing us up so that we can apply for funding for capital projects through state funding. We also have our composting program that the city is doing, and it's continuing to expand. We currently have 13 sites citywide, and we also provide composting bins for anyone who's interested in having them in their backyard if they have a backyard. So that is, I'm willing to take questions on that too. And then another really great initiative that just started is we're working with NRDC, which is the National Resource Defense Council, and other Mid-Atlantic cities to reduce food waste through the Food Matters project. So that means that we're not just looking at composting, but we're also looking at how to reduce food waste from the very beginning, just in the way that people prepare and manage their food. So that's a really great project that we're doing as well, and it will probably go on for the next 1.5 to 2 years. So we're doing a lot of projects, really excited about all of them. And if you have questions about any of them, or if you're interested in getting involved in any of them, please let me know. You can reach me through the questions here, I'll answer them, but also you can reach me at the website. You can send questions to makeitgreen@jcnj.org or call the office.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. The website was really informative, being able to go through that while you were speaking. I appreciate that. We do have a few questions from the chat box, and I just want to remind everybody that's watching whether you're on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, if you leave a comment below or to the side or however it works, we will be able to see it here, and we can actually see all your comments. And so comments, questions, we will be able to ask our speakers, and community participation is a big part of this. So I have a question here from Namdar. Do you have any plans to support solar charging stations for phones should we run into power outages during storms, Hurricane Sandy, etc.? So about solar and resiliency.
So not that specific technology of having a solar charger just for a phone. That's something we haven't looked into specifically, though we can keep an open mind about it. But absolutely, we are looking to make sure that we are more resilient for future storms. So one of the things that we're doing as part of our energy efficiency upgrades to our buildings is we're looking at how we can make places like the Bethune Center, which is a community hub during storm events and other disasters, making sure that it's up and running and that there is no delay. Same with our municipal services complex, even though it's not usually open to the public, making sure that it's resilient so that it doesn't have any downtime and that all services can be up and running. And we're continuing to have conversations with the state about how we can be more resilient within storm events. But that is a great idea, and we can look into potentially what that might cost or what it would look like.
Excellent. We have a question from YouTube from Hot Soup. Closest public EV chargers from what I saw are near Canco, Senate Place, right? Any closer, and plans for any closer? Might there be a partnership to place some near the county courthouse? And I know Bill, the chair of our Green Committee, also asked how many charging stations for EVs will there be altogether? So what does the future rollout look like there?
Great question. We're not entirely sure how many, but I know that we are committed to making sure that they're available to everyone. Not every location needs charging stations from the city. For example, some places downtown and some places in Journal Square, they do have charging stations that are publicly available. So sometimes we're right now looking at places where there aren't any. We're also looking mostly for city properties or areas that are on street that are by city parks. So for the county courthouse, I would imagine that would be a good question for the county, if that's their property, that they would be the best person or best entity to put in charging stations there. I know that they do have charging stations in Lincoln Park, so I think those are run by the county, so that might be a good conversation for them. But we are definitely looking, I think, putting in some stations, but 3 more parks in the coming year. We do have a map on the Jason Make It Green page under, what is it called? It's called Sustainable Transportation or
Sustainable Mobility.
Sustainable Mobility.
I'm looking at it right now. Yep.
And if you go to the bottom of that page, you'll see a map of where we're putting the charging stations and where we're proposing the charging stations. But it takes a while to put one in place. So I think we have one proposed for Berry Lane and by Enos Jones, and one over by Leonard Gordon Park. Okay. But we'll continue to look at spots like around Journal Square.
Because there's multiple entities that are going to be installing EVs. The county government can do it on their land, the city government can do it, but then there's also private companies or developers who might want to put EV charging stations. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to move on to a question from Clarissa on YouTube. Hi there, excited for the tree planting in JC. Do we know what percentage of the planted trees are going to be in the JSQ area?
I don't have that information right now, though we have the tree. So I'm sorry to direct you to another website, but there's a data portal for the city. We have, I think, mapped the locations of the trees that are proposed, that are being planted right now. They'll be done by the end of the year. Okay. And I know that some will be in that area, but I haven't done a percentage. What I will say is that with this funding source, a lot of it came from CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants, which emphasizes projects in low and moderate income areas based on maps that are produced through census tracts. And so most of that is not within the Journal Square area, and that's just, you know, based on census information. So we did try to focus it in the areas that were low and moderate income.
That makes sense. I can tell you, in the Journal Square area, there's a tree going in front of my house. I filled out the form online. It was really straightforward. You got to select one or two types of trees that you might like. Obviously, it's up to the city. And I even marked out the location. And about 3 weeks later, they had already come and spray painted and put a little T on the ground, which I guess means a tree is coming.
I would like to say that I've been going back through the requests and trying to, you know, map when people requested a tree and when they're getting a tree. And just wanted you to know that we are planting some trees that were first requested like 2 years ago. So
Oh, wow.
there is a delay sometimes based on funding, but when you put in a request through the Cognito form or through the adopted tree plant application, we do keep all that information. It isn't lost, and we are looking to put in trees for everyone that's requested. If it's possible, keep in mind that they do go out, and sometimes a tree cannot be planted in a specific area because of things that are going on underground, because of sidewalk widths, because of various issues.
Okay. Adam has 2 questions. I'm going to make these 2 the last questions for this session. But they're 2 quickies. One, what about LED streetlights?
Okay, so the city does not own our streetlights.
Right.
They're mostly
Right.
owned by PSEG. Currently, PSEG is working with the the BPU, sorry, the Board of Public Utilities through the state on potentially switching over to LEDs, but the BPU has to approve that, and they also have to provide a rate that's fair, because the city will still be paying for the electricity when they switch over. So I think that's mostly what the deliberations are right now, because we want to make sure that we get a rate that actually gives us credit for using less electricity because they're more energy efficient. So that is something that's out of our hands, though the city has been advocating for the switch to LEDs.
Okay, and I have another quick one from Adam. Will the city expand recycling to number 4 and number 5 for milk and juice cartons?
So that is definitely a better question for Sonia Marte Dublin, who is the head of recycling through sanitation. But I can say that in general, the recycling market is not looking good. Things are just not really being able to be recycled more comprehensively. My advice to people is to stop thinking about using single use in general and trying to get basically move away from anything that they consider to be recycling, because it's so complicated and not necessarily as helpful as we once thought it was, and try to get containers and goods in containers that can be used multiple times or that are glass or metal. I know that that's not really where the economy is with retail, and that's not very heartening to hear, but really the recycling market is going to continue to look not so great, and I don't imagine that cities like Jersey City will be expanding the recycling.
Okay. With that, I'm going to thank you for coming. Again, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
makeitgreen@jcnj.org, or you can call the office phone. I know that number is on the website at the bottom of the page. I don't have it off the top of my head. And yeah, feel free to send an email. Thank you so much for having me, and I had a great time.
Thank you very much, Kate. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much to Kate for joining us. And then Bill has a comment here. Bill, do you want to make your comment to the group?
Yeah, the Jersey City Environmental Commission is holding a meeting Thursday evening at 6 p.m. to discuss the plastic bag ban and single-use plastics in general. So, and the Green Committee, which I chair, will be meeting this Wednesday, November 18th at 7 p.m. So we have about 60 people on our email list, and I But if you're not on that list, if you want to be part of that meeting, please email hello@jsqca.com. And that's the correct email address, right, Kevin?
That is correct, yes.
And then I'll add you to our mailing list, and we'll be going over a lot of the things that Kate discussed tonight. So that's 7 p.m. this Wednesday.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Bill. Okay, I am going to move on to our next speaker. Lindsey Sigmund is the environmental planner for the city of Jersey City, and she has come here today to talk to us about the Jersey City Master Plan. Lindsey, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good. There's a little noise in the background, but we can hear you okay.
Okay, good.
Fantastic. So yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about the master plan? I have your slides ready when you are.
I'm ready. If you can bring those up, that'd be great.
Sure.
Good morning, everyone. While Kevin's bringing that up, my name is Lindsey Sigmund from the Division of City Planning. I'm the environmental planner for the city, and I am managing the open space element of the master plan rewrite, which I'm here to talk about this morning. So city planning is rewriting the land use element and the open space, recreation, and community facilities element of the master plan, which we just call for shorthand the open space element. Again, very wordy, but recreation and community facilities are a part of that as well. So this morning, I'm going to briefly go over what a master plan is, where we are in the process, and how you can get involved. So if you can go to the next slide, please. So what is a master plan? A master plan is a vision for future growth and development of a municipality. And every municipality in the state of New Jersey is required to adopt one. So for Jersey City, this will be a vision or a blueprint for growth, revitalization, and preservation. And you may ask, how will this broad plan be used in the future? So while the master plan does not include specific laws or mandates, it will inform those decisions in the future. So for example, if a change is going to be made to a zone in the city, and for those of you who are listening in who may not be as familiar with zoning, zoning guides the development of land in the city. So basically what can be built where. So if we were going to make a change to a zone, we would be looking at the findings and recommendations of this master plan to justify whatever decision is being made. And the last master plan was adopted in 2000. So obviously a lot has changed in Jersey City in the past 20 years in terms of growth and development of land. So next, please. So why is it important? I already touched on this a little bit, but the city will use the master plan to identify priorities and policy directions for the next 20 years. So we call it a master plan vision, to adopt new laws, to make spending decisions, and to guide decisions on development applications. Other state, county, and local governments, especially those cities that surround Jersey City, use our master plan to understand what our priorities are as Jersey City and to coordinate on projects. Businesses can use the master plan to understand where the city will invest its resources, and residents of Jersey City can use the master plan to hold their elected representatives, just the city, accountable to this community-driven vision. And next, please. So this is a timeline of the project. First, from the top, I wanted to say that while this plan is being driven by Jersey City planning staff, it is also guided by a team of consultants that we brought on that we work very closely with to ensure that they're talking to the right people and have all the information that they need. So again, this is a timeline of the project. We kicked off back in March. Obviously that overlapped with the COVID pandemic, so our timeline shifted a bit in terms of community engagement. We really wanted to get out there and talk to people in person over the summer while it's nice out, but we wanted to be safe, so we switched to mainly virtual. These past few months were all about collecting information to inform what are the existing conditions of the city, having conversations with stakeholders, things like that. And we did have an in-person walkthrough open house back in October, and we had 2 virtual meetings as well last month. So where we are right now is wrapping up existing conditions. We've also had a survey open. The since August for the public to take. And now this survey is closing next Friday, November 20th. And I'll go back to that, but it's very important that everyone that lives in Jersey City can take this survey. Anyone listening in, if you haven't done so, please fill out the survey. And again, I'll loop back to that towards the end. Next, we're going to be, after we wrap up existing conditions, we'll go forward with draft plans and recommendations, have some additional engagement. We're going to be working on small area vision plans, which I'll go into more detail in just a moment. And then in the summer, final plans and recommendations. Next slide, please. So again, if you look towards the right, we are rewriting the open space and land use element, like I mentioned. On the other end of this graphic, these are the elements that have previously been updated the past 20 years. So our housing element, our circulation element or transportation, our bike and pedestrian plans, and our climate action and resiliency plans, which Kate actually mentioned just a moment ago. So all of these planning efforts that have previously been completed, in addition to other resources, will inform the open space and land use rewrite. And since the bike and pedestrian plans are on this slide, it's an example. I'm sure a lot of you have seen all the protected bike lanes that are being built out. That was due to the bike master plan that was completed about 2 years ago now at this point. So that's a great example of seeing how does this planning document translate to something physical, like a protected bike lane. Okay, next slide, please. So the entire plan, this visioning, is framed around 4 lenses that will inform, existing conditions and recommendations of the plan. So always keeping these lenses in mind when making those recommendations and evaluating existing issues. So those lenses are connectivity and mobility, economic opportunity, social equity, and climate resiliency. And next slide, please. So I mentioned these small area vision plans that we're going to start working on with the community in the spring. So small area vision plans will establish strong visions for specific areas that will guide both private and public investment in the area. So for this endeavor, we are selecting 3 areas in the city to write these plans for as part of the master plan. And these plans will be important for demonstrating how this larger master plan vision can be implemented at a smaller scale. And then we can use these plans as a model for future small area plans. So I mentioned the survey. There are 3 surveys. There's the visioning survey, a neighborhood survey, and an open space survey. So the neighborhood survey will be used to identify these areas. Again, please take the survey. We really want not just the small area vision plans to be community driven, but the entire plan. And while there'll be other opportunities for engagement, this is really the first opportunity that you can get your voice heard to lay that groundwork as we move forward with the plan. Next slide, please. I think this is, these are the 3 surveys. So when you go to the master plan website, that hyperlink there is the longer version. But if you just go to jcnj.org/ourjc, and that link will be on the last slide as well. But you just go to the surveys tab and it'll bring you to this page. There are 3 separate surveys. They each take about 10 minutes. But you have the next week to take them. You could do them all at once or take your time. Like I said, it's just really important that we get as much input as possible as we move forward. Next slide, please. I think that's the last one. Yeah, so that's our website, that first link. You could follow us on social media. You can sign up for our emails. That's ourjc@jcnj.org. And I'm more than okay with Kevin or Bill sharing my contact information if anyone has any questions outside of today's meeting. And yeah, so again, please take the surveys and stay involved as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lindsay. That was really fantastic. If you have a moment, let me just take a look at the chat to see if we have any questions. Sonia is asking, what criteria determines the 3 areas that you're going to be choosing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I'm doing the open space plan. This is the land use elements team, so I'm not as involved with that. So basically, where are there areas that we're seeing like upcoming development that weren't previously as developed? So areas that aren't specifically like downtown, areas where commercial corridors may need some help, areas where we see a lot of zoning board applications where things are being built that aren't permitted but fit in with what's existing there. So things where areas where the zoning doesn't necessarily match what's built out there to reevaluate. Those are just a few criteria, but like I said, those surveys and people's responses about what they want to see in their neighborhood will really inform how we prioritize those small area visions.
Cheryl is asking, is there a way to get a copy of the presentation?
Yes, I can either share this, but we did have those virtual meetings last month, which are way more comprehensive than these few slides. So if you go to the master plan website and go to the events tab, there's not only a download of the presentation, but you can watch the full presentation, each about 20, 30 minutes. So you can have these slides, but I think that the full presentation will be even more useful if you want to learn more.
And this meeting will be hosted on Facebook and YouTube, you know, for the foreseeable future. So I know Bill has a question. Bill, do you want to come on?
Yeah. Lindsey, what's the context for completing the membership?
Right. So like I said, we kicked off back in March. Things slowed down a bit, but based on that timeline that I shared, our goal is to have it all wrapped up and adopted by the planning board, because that's the entity that adopts it, by July or August. And it's really just going to depend on how much engagement we can do over the winter months. Obviously, we're limited due to COVID, but we really want to make sure that we're engaging people. So, you know, we want to make sure we have accurate information before we finalize the plan. So, but this summer,
Okay.
And we will wrap it up.
I have one more question from the community, and I'll make this the last one. This is again from Hot Soup. It might be too preliminary, but what's the biggest challenge between 2000 and 2020, both in general and related to open space? What's the biggest thing that didn't go as planned or changed from 2000?
So from 2000, so even just the past 10 years, I think people who live in Jersey City have been very aware of the rapid development of the city. So assumptions have changed about, okay, what does Jersey City need with this influx of population, whether that be parks and open space, and not just the existence of parks and open space and the acreage, but what is actually there as an amenity for residents to use, what recreational opportunities. So that's why it's really important that we're doing land use and open space at the same time for that reason, like looking at demographic shifts and what the needs of the community are. Out of open space, but also like our schools, what community benefits do people need based on increased development? And I think schools, open space, and affordable housing are really like the top three bigger community benefits that we're evaluating based on this huge population increase and increased development from the past 10, 20 years.
Well, fantastic. I really appreciate you joining us this morning. The website to get in touch is jcnj.org/OurJC, correct?
Yes. And thank you for putting that up there. This is a really cool platform. And thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. We really appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
You too.
So yeah, thank you to Lindsey. That was fantastic. And thank you everybody for, staying engaged, asking questions. We haven't had an in-person meeting in, it feels like a year. It's almost a year now. And I really enjoy seeing all the conversation happening in the chat and, giving our speakers, letting them know that there's somebody out there listening. So thank you very much for your questions and your feedback. Our next speaker this morning is Debra Kagan. She's the executive director of the New Jersey Bike Walk Coalition. And she is here today to talk about a very exciting project known as the East Coast Greenway. I know a lot of you have worked in the Green Committee with Bill. We've talked about a project called the Bergen Arches, which is a underutilized rail line that goes right through the heart of Journal Square. This is a similar rails to trails type project, a little bit further west, connecting the Hackensack all the way to Montclair. Deb is going to tell you a lot more about the project, and she's going to correct me if I made any mistakes. But with that, I'd like to introduce Debra Kagan. Good morning, Deb.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. And I've learned so much already by listening to the other speakers. So this is a perfect combination, I think, of speakers for your.
I do like it. We have a good theme going today. Yeah.
And what we're doing fits right in with a lot of the goals that were mentioned for the master plan and the sustainability and work that both of the other speakers are doing. So, yep. So I'm ready for the slides. Anytime you want to put
You
those
got
up.
it.
Great. Thanks.
I'm going to go away now.
Okay. So this project is called the Essex-Hudson Greenway, and it's basically an open space and linear park project for northern New Jersey. And just to comment on Kevin, the East Coast Greenway is looking at this particular corridor as part of the East Coast Greenway, but this greenway is called the Essex-Hudson Greenway. And next.
I'm sorry, did I say the East Coast Greenway before?
You did, but it's
Oh my
not
gosh.
uncommon. It's okay.
I know the difference, and I very much apologize. Okay, we'll get back to the Essex-Hudson Greenway.
That's okay. We are partners together, and in fact, they will overlap. So you weren't completely off. And partners that are working on this project together, the Open Space Institute, which is a national conservation leader helping to protect 2.3 million acres across the eastern U.S. and Canada. The New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, of which I am the executive director, as Kevin mentioned. We are the only statewide advocacy organization, and we advocate for protecting and safe bicycle and pedestrian policy, as well as programs and education. And we have the viewpoint that a more rideable and walkable New Jersey means a more livable, equitable, and sustainable New Jersey. So all of these issues of open space are very connected with equitable mobility and sustainable mobility for us. And the third partner is the September 11th National Memorial Trail. It's a 1,300-mile system of trails and roadways that links the various national memorial sites from 9/11 through New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey and Virginia. Next. So we've all been working together recently, but this idea of having a greenway that goes between Montclair and Jersey City along the rail line of the old Booton line that people might have known it. You also might have heard of it as the Ice and Iron Trail. Both of those terms have been used. So there's been about 20 years, the Norfolk Southern Railroad, which owns the property and the railway, has stopped having any kind of commuter service on it since about 2002. Next. So since that time, everybody along the line from the various towns, there's 8 towns in both Essex and Hudson counties, have been talking about what kind of opportunity this space could bring to the region. But the railroad was not interested in selling it, so the advocacy efforts sort of were stalled because of that. But the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition took this project on as a main focus in 2014 and began to galvanize the advocacy all along the line, including resolutions from all the local towns that have been very supportive of trying to get this project off the ground. We began to hear that the railroad was interested in selling the property and brought on the Open Space Institute to help with the land transaction. It's very complicated to take over and buy a railroad corridor. But OSI came to an agreement with Norfolk Southern, the railroad, in 2020. There was a press release in the summer. There is a preliminary purchase and sale agreement, meaning that we have a limited time in which to buy this corridor with the intention that it be a multi-shared path and that it be eventually, after this transaction is completed, that the 2 counties in some form that we have yet to figure out would take over ownership of it. Next. So let's talk a little bit about what it is. Here's a basic map. It goes across 8 towns. So it's Montclair, Glen Ridge, Bloomfield, Belleville, Newark, Kearney, a little bit of Secaucus, and Jersey City. And we'll show you another map exactly where it comes in, just north of General Square. So there's about 9 miles of road connectivity, and the whole orientation of this greenway is to provide new open space for recreation, for transportation, and for health. Next. So here's just some very basic facts. There's 185 acres of new green space that would be provided for over 500,000 residents. The environmental design will incorporate various design solutions for runoff and flooding mitigation, and we've been also exploring combined sewage overflow, different solutions for a few of the towns, including Jersey City, Newark, and Kearney on that. It links to some other major trails, and I'll show you a map in a bit, including the East Coast Greenway, the 9/11 Memorial Trail, and the Morris Canal. And it would provide transportation alternatives. So that's walking and biking for over 300,000 commuters. We have, as part of this agreement, includes the subterranean rights. So that gives us the ability to do options for internet, 5G, new infrastructure along the entire corridor. And this corridor is about 100-foot wide right-of-way in most places, which is a really wide amount of space. And in some places, in fact, near Jersey City at the end, it's even quite wider. Next. So this greenway covers like 4 basic areas of benefits that we just want to briefly talk about. These are statistics that are nationally in general. The idea is that this corridor connects both trails and parks, giving people a lot more access to green space for walking and biking. One thing that's been very clear during the pandemic is the importance of having open space for personal health, for essential exercise. More and more people are getting outside and realizing the importance to being able to exercise outside for both physical and mental health. And that's in contrast to less than about 1/3 of Americans currently meet the National Physical Activity Standards. So creating these new places for physical activity tends to lead to a 26% increase in people who exercise 3 or more days per week. And these are statistics from the CDC. So it's not just in our area, but we have 2 of the most densely populated counties between Essex and Hudson. So having open space is rare sometimes and critical for us to try to develop and preserve the open space that we have. So next. So transportation. This is envisioned as a multi-use or shared use path, which means it would have pathways for both biking and walking, and connects all these towns. So it creates a whole new opportunity for commuting, both between towns, between the suburban areas in Essex and the cities in the western part, and also to New York City. So it also helps to recognize that there's a lot of people who don't have cars, and particularly along this corridor, there are a lot of communities that do not have most of their residents own cars or use cars as their main form of transportation. So it would provide this whole new option for commuting. And that helps to reduce congestion and traffic, and as a result also reduces air pollution. So auto usage along greenways generally goes up about, the reduction goes up about 30%. And that's a lot. That makes, over time, makes quite a bit of difference in terms of air quality and congestion. Next. Sorry. So it's also, and this is very timely that you've had the other 2 speakers today. This is an important project for the environment. It would provide a continuous wildlife corridor the vision that we have, and of course we are in the very early stages of this, is that along with the pathways, it has a great deal of space for plantings, for trees, especially in areas that don't have a lot of them, to reduce the heat island effect. And Lindsey, of course, was talking about the tree program as well. It also has space, because it's wide enough, for swale rain gardens to mitigate flooding and improve soil erosion and the road runoff. And we just talked about the air quality. Next. It also has been proven to spur economic development, particularly in local communities. It brings in business, it brings in new people, and a lot of, these are just a couple examples. I mean, you all have heard, of course, of the most talked about one in our area, which is the High Line. But this is the Great Allegheny Passageway in Pennsylvania, which does not even run through major towns the way some of these other do. The state's had direct economic impact of a trail to be about 14 million. Miami Underline, which is another one that runs through that area, generated about 50 million in economic activity per year. Now, this is something we're looking forward to do our economic study for this quarter, but these are statistics that happen across the country when greenways are put in. It also increases housing value along the corridor, anywhere between 4 and 20%. And next slide. So this is another just map. We have a number of different maps that we've created about the corridor. This one just gives us an idea of the diversity of communities. This map is based on language other than English spoken at home. So you can see there's a great diversity exactly along where the corridor goes through. Next slide. It also gives us access for schools, for safe routes to schools. There's a number of schools that are very close, and this little map in the corner shows you the schools. The green dots, the small green dots, are schools. The shaded area of green around the endpoint there is a quarter mile, and the larger one is 1 mile. The number of schools that are within close proximity to this trailway. Next slide. This is an overview map of some of the other trail and proposed projects that are in Jersey City that it would be connected to. So up at the top, you see the teal sort of line. That is the proposed Essex-Hudson Greenway. And then the red line going through it, which is the nearest, is the proposed Bergen Arches project that Kevin mentioned. And then there's the 6th Street embankment that goes across there, and a number of other, including the Hudson River Walkway, the Morris Canal, and the green at the bottom. And the East Coast Greenway would go along the blue one on the right, which is the Hudson River Walkway. So it becomes part, you can begin to see sort of this whole network for mobility and for open space that it can become. Next slide. Here's a close-up. So again, the teal, that's the right-of-way that's owned by the railroad. It would come in to Jersey City at that point. And you can see its proximity to Journal Square and to the proposed Bergen Arches project. Next slide. This just gives you an idea of how wide it is. So that sort of beigey color is 100 width, and the darker green and lighter green are even wider. So the piece that comes into Jersey City, that's at the far right, is quite wide. And that leaves a lot of possibility for what kind of amenities and what could go in that space. Next slide. These are some vision renderings. of what this could look like. This is one that is part of sort of the western suburban area where there is right now a lot of tree cover. You can see from the descriptions at the bottom, it's talking about the space for swales and for planting, space on the right hand there for community gathering and programming, place to rest. So it combines the whole aspect of having a linear park with having a transportation corridor. Next. This is another view. This is a rendering in the Newark area, and you know the building way on the right, that little peaked brown point at the bottom would be the Tiffany building. Right now, this area is parking lots, asphalt over, and doing some just dumping that's going on there for some various asphalt construction companies. So the idea that this could become new green space with tree plantings, with gardens, both again for community and programming development as well as for transportation. Next slide. And this is a view, it goes across the Meadowlands area and has some beautiful views. I, in fact, was just did the trails in the Meadowland Environmental Center yesterday. It would help create access to this trail network and this open space and recreation potential that's actually kind of difficult to get to right now. So it would go straight across. There is a bridge across the Hackensack that we will have to get a solution for. But you can see just sort of the potential for increasing recreation and access, again, along with transportation. Next slide. So we just want to talk a little bit about where the project is at right now and what kind of support we're looking for from the communities. So as I mentioned, OSI has negotiated a purchase and sale agreement. That purchase and sale agreement is going to expire in January with an option to extend it for one more year. We need to show that we are making progress towards having the counties take this on both financially and the responsibility for further development. If this agreement with OSI does not get completed by the time, by the end of that year, then the railroad will have the option to sell pieces of this land off, piecemeal by piecemeal, and we will lose this corridor forever once it's sold off like that. So we have at risk here is losing this incredible open space, and that's why, and that's what the abandonment status means. When a railroad applies for abandonment, which they have, and they have gotten that status approved by the National Surface Transportation Board, which is a lot of legal things that happen with railroads in order for them to stop using the space as a railroad. They then have the ability to sell it off any way they want. So we have been working with OSI. There's a lot of the due diligence for selling it, for having the county take it over, engineering studies, environmental studies, mapping, vision renderings that I just showed you, and community outreach. So recently, both Essex and Hudson counties have passed general resolutions of support. Next slide. But we need to make sure that the counties know that we support this project, that people in the two counties support this project, so that they will go to the next stage moving forward to begin to take over the project. We are working with them to develop a financing package that does not include monies that would be used for COVID relief, as well as working towards what kind of an organizational structure they would that would take over the maintenance and development of the project. So it's really important for people to voice their support for this project right now, and that the counties hear this. It's a difficult time. Of course, this project's been going on for a while. No one anticipated COVID and the effect that it would have on the county and municipal budgets, which of course is severe. So it's important that our officials know that this is one of the priorities, and that we see this as a project for building future resiliency in Northern Jersey. It's really a project for post-COVID. It checks off all of the important sustainability, health, transportation issues that we just went through. So we have put up on our website, and I should have told you this before. Next slide. Okay. So the Essex-Hudson Greenway and Kevin, I don't know if you can put it up now, but it has a support tab at the top, and in that tab there is a digital letter that individuals and organizations can sign that says thank you to the counties for their support so far, and that lets them know that you support the project and that we want it to move forward. And that's what we, so if you go to support, thanks, Kevin. So at the bottom, there's a tab for either Hudson or Essex. You can click on the Hudson version. You fill out the information, and it will automatically send a letter. You can also customize the letter if you have comments or experience that you'd like to share to support this action. And you have to fill it out to get to the letter, but that's okay.
And Deb, I actually shared this link in the chat box as well.
Oh,
so
great.
if you're looking on Facebook, you'll see this link in the comments.
Thank you. Great. So this, if you fill out this letter, it will go automatically to all the commissioners and to the county executive to let them know that you support the project. We also are going to be putting up a list of organizations that support the project on the website. So if you're an organization, or if you know of an organization that would like to be listed, you should email us, let us know, and we have a form you can fill out, or you can just let us know in the email. So the last slide had, and just so you know, this website has terrific drone footage. It's really fun to see that goes over the project, as well as more information. You can always reach me at info@njbwc.org. We also have, I believe the last slide has my email. And Lauren Rushing, who is with us today, is our community engagement manager. And we are offering to do these kind of presentations and to have conversations. We want to hear from all the residents the same way that you're soliciting input for the survey for the master plan. We need to hear what people want, what your concerns are, what the issues are about this project. It will inform what we do and inform the whole development going forward. So we're in the early stages of this. We're still in what's called the acquisition stage or phase. So no decisions have been made on any design for the project, and those renderings that we showed you are just vision renderings. They're just an idea of what could be possible, but really it will depend on the participation of people from all the communities along the line, what it actually will look like, and what direction the development will take. So we do want to hear from you. We are offering to do kind of presentations for other groups, organizations, and we're really interested in working with you all to identify other community groups in Jersey City to do this with. So that's the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions, and thank you very much for listening to all that.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah. That was fantastic. And I know this is a project our members have been interested in. There's a lot of questions from the chat. I do want to let everybody know, I have posted on Facebook earlier, because when we do public letters, we share it with the community. But, like many of the topics today have been clearly within the mission of our organization, Journal Square Community Association, Clean, Green, and Safe, Building a Better Community. And this obviously satisfies the green element, the open space, and our other speaker today will also be talking about open space. So I do want you to know that at our, I believe it was our November board meeting, but it took place in October. The board voted and we approved a letter. We wrote a letter to the Essex-Hudson Greenway, to the partners, Open Space Institute, New Jersey Bike Walk, writing about the support that the board gave to this project. So our association has signed up. The board is in favor of it. And so we've already submitted that letter of support. Like I mentioned before, if you're interested in supporting it yourself, the link is going to be in the chat box below. It'll be a comment. Take a look at it, or you could go to EssexHudsonGreenway.org and fill it out yourself, share it with your neighbors if you wish. So Deb, I'm going to move to questions from the group. I know my group pretty well. We like to get in the weeds. So if there's a complex question about abandonment processes and things like that, I apologize in advance. We get excited about this stuff. And I'll tell you, the Bergen Arches, the work we've done on the Bergen Arches is really, the work we've done on the Bergen Arches has given us we don't have a lot of open space in Journal Square, and transportation is this community, right? We have a big path station, we have a big bus station, we are a crossroads, and obviously this is a connection to the rest of America, really. So
right, I'll do my best.
That's all we ask. That's great. I do have a question from Jeff Hendy, one of our members. Where'd it go? Where are you, Jeff? There we go. Are there trade-offs that will need to be made between recreation and transportation uses? Which will be prioritized?
Good question. Well, first of all, we are not in a position to make those decisions yet. As I said, the first important thing to know, those decisions will come from an interaction with the various communities when we go into the development stage of this, which will be after it's acquired. So whatever the entity is that will be taking over the management of this, there will be in partnership with the municipalities and the county, and we will be continuing to do community outreach, which will be essential to answer those questions. So the vision is that it should be both, that there should be equal access for walking and biking. That's the vision right now, and that's in the purchase and sale agreement, and that would be taken over by the counties. Exactly how many, we've gotten questions like how many lanes, is there going to be, two-way lanes for bikes or walking? What about e-bikes? All those kind of questions will need to be discussed. It is wide enough, the corridor, to have equal access for walking and biking. And that right now is the vision, but it will be up to the communities in the design process and eventually the budget on how that plays out in each part.
And I know there's a question from Hot Soup on YouTube, but a similar project, how this person was referencing a project in Queens where there was an argument over the use of the right-of-way. Would you say that the settlement between OSI and Norfolk Southern has kind of settled that, or is it still up to whoever purchases the land?
Well, the agreement specified that the intention is for a shared use path. Shared use means between walking and biking, but it also has some open-ended form of other transit on it. But it would not eliminate the biking and walking idea. So that's the purchase and sale agreement language right now. That's the intention, and that is the intention when the counties take it over.
We have a question from Chris Lamb, who's the chair of our construction and planning committee. He asked, what was the price to acquire from Norfolk Southern?
The final agreement was $65 million, and has some differentiations depending on, there's some leases and various revenue streams that would impact it slightly. but that's generally what the price.
Do you know the last time, Chris has another comment that's similar to this. There's a conversation going on in the comments, but do you know the last time this was used as an active rail line?
It was 2002 for commuter, and then they did some freight for a few years. But I took a quick look at the chat comments. So the new Booten line was created to take over the commercial. Started. It begins at the same place in Montclair and then divides off. So the Booten line is what replaced the old Booten line. And it was in the early 2000s when it stopped.
Okay.
It's been out of use
question
for a long time, and in the process, some things have been dumped on the trail. It's been not kept in some places, so it's been quite a while. So a lot of communities are excited to have it finally cleaned up and be a usable, populated public space.
Mm-hmm. Henry asks, and I know the details obviously aren't finalized until they're finalized, but what are the plans or what are the early discussions about fitting the Greenway over the Hackensack River? I know there's a rail bridge there now that I believe is stuck in the open position.
Yeah, there's a bridge, the DB drop bridge. It's been put in an open position to allow for freight to go through. It's a very old bridge. It was built in the mid 1800s. So we are in the process of doing engineering studies for what the potential are, what shape it's in right now, exploring opportunities for who might help to finance doing a solution for that bridge. So that's all in very early stages of discussion.
Okay. It looks like we don't have that many more comments from the group. If anybody wants to comment below, just leave a comment, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and I'll ask Debra for sure. But there is a comment here from Sonia. It's kind of long, but she asks, Bergen Arches went out. She's asking about the Bergen Arches, which is a project we've been working on. She wants to know, can you share any advice on making headway with reluctant politicians / railroad owners?
Patience. How's that for the first thing? This project has been taking a very long time. As I said, people have been talking about this since the early 2000s for this project. We were fortunate that we got to a point with the railroad that they were willing to sell. And seeing the importance and the benefits of these kind of projects to elected officials and continuing to do that is an important part of this process, as well as putting together advocacy that you can then approach the railroad with as well. These projects are fitting in really well, I believe, with all of the master plan sustainability issues that you've just discussed earlier, emphasizing how it fits in with the master plan, how it fits in with the master action and areas of emphasis that Lindsey talked about, and just doing as much advocacy and outreach as possible now, preparing to get to a point where you can negotiate with the railroad, which is one of the it's one of the more difficult hurdles to get through. But I'd be happy to talk with somebody offline to follow this conversation up if you'd like to do that.
And I think I'm going to give the last question to Bill, who is the chair of our Green Committee. Bill, I'll bring you on, and I'm going to share a slide that relates to your question. Go ahead, Bill.
Sure. Well, following up on Sonia's question about the Bergen Arches, which is owned by New Jersey Transit, and we've had discussions with them and haven't been able to make any headway. But do you foresee any possibility of perhaps the Open Space Institute being able to cut a deal with New Jersey Transit, where it could acquire the Bergen Arches? I know that they are still talking about the possibility of some kind of light rail service along the Bergen Arches, but that's not really feasible for the next 20 or 30 years.
I can't answer for Open Space Institute, first of all. So I would encourage you to continue to have a conversation with them. Right now, their focus in this area has been to try to complete this acquisition for the Essex-Hudson Greenway. If that, and I'm assuming it will be successful, then looking at other out-of-use rail lines in the area makes a lot of sense, but I can't speak for where their priorities will be. So that's a conversation you should have with them, Bill, going forward. It certainly will help the argument to have the East Coast Greenway acquisition completed. We've had experience then with the process, working with the railroads. And New Jersey Transit is involved in this conversation as they have access at the end part of the trail to do construction for the Portal Bridge. So we are in conversations with New Jersey Transit for part of the East Coast Greenway project as well. And we'll just have to see, I guess, what happens going forward.
You mean the Essex-Hudson Greenway?
What did I say?
You said East Coast Greenway?
Yes, contagious.
Kevin, you've got my head.
Yes, that is correct. I have that effect on people.
Yeah, so I will...
the Essex-Hudson Greenway.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, New Jersey Transit's involved with our conversations with the Essex-Hudson Greenway, and they are going to need access to do the construction on the Portal Bridge in that same area. So,
yeah. And so I will follow up with Terrence at the Open Space Institute, and I think maybe we, as an association, could also reach out to Governor Murphy directly. We had regarding the Bergen Arches. We've had discussions with Mayor Fulp quite extensively, and also with some of our legislators. But I think going to the top would be advisable for us.
All right. Thank you, Bill. And just so everybody knows, the East Coast Greenway is a planned off-road trail from Maine to Florida. It's a huge project. People have been working on it for over a decade. The reason we're so excited about it is because this would naturally fit into that concept, right? There's no good off-road way to get from New York to Philadelphia.
Yes.
And this would really help build that connection. Before, when I said this is a connection to the rest of the country, it is. If you can get across the Hudson River, get across the Hackensack River, you can connect to Pennsylvania, which is the 9/11 trail concept. You can connect to Philadelphia, all other sorts of regions. So it's a huge, huge project. And the Essex-Hudson Greenway is obviously a big, big segment on that.
yeah, I mean, I think it's the transformational project right now in the region for this region. And that's the way we think. And we think of it as a key regional project, particularly for the road to recovery post-COVID. So.
All right. Well, Debra Kagan, thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody wants more information, EssexHudsonGreenway.org. Otherwise, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, and thank you to Debra. I really appreciate having so many speakers on the same topics. Like I said, this fits in with our mission. I know these are projects the Green Committee is passionate about, that a lot of you are passionate about. And it fits into, a lot of the themes about open space and green and sustainability that we've talked about in this association since its very founding. In fact, a very funny, short, brief story about the master plan. There was an attempt to begin the master plan again, I think in 2015, 2016. And we were in a little small group, and I was sitting there with Bill, Arena Zachby, and Renee Torella Cassidy, and talking about like what the issues were in our neighborhood, and what we wanted to fix, what we wanted to clean up. Obviously, I was probably talking about bike lanes or something like that. And Bill turned around and said, well, if you're so interested in these things, we're starting a community association and you should join. And, here we are 3 years later. So, the master plan, these projects, it takes time, but it really does have an effect on our surroundings and the community that we can build together. So with that, I want to bring in one of our members, Russell Dover. He has been working with one of the local developers on a pretty exciting project. I call it the Homestead Assemblage. I think people are calling it the Homestead Walkway, but Russell's going to give you a full introduction. This is somebody that's been partnering, a local developer that's been partnering with us, getting feedback about a pretty exciting open space project. And he wanted to give a presentation to the group and get your feedback. So again, in the comments, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, please, give Russell your feedback. We're collecting a lot of information today that we can use to have this conversation with the developer going forward about what we want open space to look like. So Russell, I'm going to turn you on right now. Hey, Russell, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great. Are you ready to share your screen?
Sure. Let me go ahead and do that.
Yeah, once you click it, I have to do a little stage management.
Okay.
But we'll get it on there. And if not, I have your slides.
Yeah, let me know if this works. If not,
it has worked. So this is
fantastic.
All right, all yours, Russell.
Excellent. So, so first of all, I think a great segue in terms, Kevin, in terms of this is a great example of an opportunity where the community really can make a difference. This is a unique opportunity for us as a community. We've been given a lot of leeway in providing guidance for the city on what we'd like to see in this area. So let me sort of walk through what this is, where it is, and what we're trying to do here. This is the creation of a new pedestrian walkway, whether you call it Homestead Assemblage, the Homestead Extension, the Homestead, pedestrian street, all things I've heard. This is a new public space, so it's really exciting. So we're going to talk about today what's there now, what potentially will be there in the future based on our feedback. I'm going to walk through with you a workshop that we held as part of the Construction and Planning Committee back in February. Walk through some of the photos that we went through as part of that workshop. As Kevin mentions, we really welcome and encourage your comments and feedback. And then we'll talk about the recommendations that came out of that workshop and incorporate yours into that. So where is this? This is basically going from Pavonia Ave to Newark Ave, coming right out of the new Kushner building, the One Journal Square, on Pavonia Ave, so directly adjacent to the PATH station, Journal Square station. This is, so right now, this part of it, and I'll show you a picture, is Homestead Place. That is a current one-way street. This part of from Van Ruypen to Cottage and from Cottage to Newark will be newly created a pedestrian street. And today it's parts of residential lots. Okay. This will, so in exchange for the creation of these new pedestrian streets, a developer, Namdar Group, has been given the right to build from the current kind of mid-block development rights of 4-story heights, I believe, to 28 floors. So it's a huge benefit to the developer. And in return, they're expected to really develop this area as a destination for our community. It will likely be maintained by a private organization on behalf of the developer. The actual property will be city property. So what does it look like today? This is Homestead Place. This first picture is looking north, and this second picture is looking south towards One Journal Square. This is part of what will be the pedestrian street between Van Rypen and Cottage, and this is part of what will be that street between Newark and Cottage. Right, so that's what's there today. This is the rendering that's been released of what they think it may look like in the future. So a very different look than how it looks today, but really the details of what this looks like in terms of the materials, the amenities are things that they have said, and this is actually wording from the designation from the city, that the community will basically decide. So that's us. So we have a big responsibility here in providing guidance to the city and the developer. Okay. One of the things I think that's really important as we think about this is the framing of this. So you saw that in the last picture, hopefully, and here, this is coming right from the PATH train directly north. This is the start of the first of the three Namdar towers that will be bordering this pedestrian walkway. This is a rendering. So here you can see the beginnings of it. They're probably about 15 stories high at this point. As mentioned, there'll be sort of, I think, officially 28 stories plus a mezzanine. So almost 30 stories high. You can see the current scale here of the buildings surrounding it, typically 2-story homes. So they're large towers that the developer's getting to build in exchange for the give back to the community, which is this pedestrian street. As I mentioned, in February, we held a design workshop that took a number of hours. We went through lots of different concepts and visuals, talked about what our visioning would be for this particular space. And I'll walk you through that. We won't recreate that several-hour workshop with all of you today, but I hope to give you a sense of exactly what the process was. And recreate a little bit of that so we can incorporate additional feedback into the final recommendations document. Okay, so I'm going to go through a series of photos of pedestrian streets around the world so that you can think about what's successful or not successful and how that might translate to this new pedestrian street here in Journal Square. So one of the most important decisions and fundamental decisions about this streetscape is going to be, what's the material that it's built with, right? It's one of the more permanent decisions as well. And so in all of these, please pay attention to what the material is. This is one where we've got some kind of rough hewn stone and some smooth stone. This is certainly wider than the 20 feet that this pedestrian street will be. But it gives you a sense of what that might look like. In a number of these photos, you'll see sort of a separation of one particular kind of, more transit or traffic area of the walkers and more amenity kind of casual strolling or sitting along the sides. That's a common theme that you'll see. Here's another thing, another common theme that you will see, and it's difficult to see in this photograph, but the actual materials here are two-tone, and there's a pattern in it. You'll also see that there's sort of a very, very slight grade toward the center that allows water to drain. And so drainage is something that came up that in terms of the operational maintenance of this space. Here's another one. We see some alternating street furniture, benches, along with a lamppost, some trees. One of the questions that we're eager to get feedback on is whether to have permanent or only temporary street furniture. I think we see both in a lot of these photos. So yeah, anything that I'm pointing out, please feel free to comment on, or other things that you notice about these photos. Here, another thing from a maintenance perspective, we see both waste bins and recycling containers. We see planters. So those are all types of the sort of amenities, safety and maintenance aspects that we want to consider in our recommendations. Here we noticed a lack of vegetation, so kind of greenery is something that we want to consider in terms of our recommendations. Another thing that's similar, and we'll get to this a little bit later, is the color of the brick here. And again, this, like so many others, we see sort of a central kind of space for transit. This one, I wouldn't be surprised if they allow cars on. You can see a bicycle sign here, and obviously primarily a pedestrian street here. And also the coloration. We'll talk about what historically is in Homestead Place as a material, and how the committee really wanted to figure out from both the historical elements of Homestead Place and the larger Journal Square community, how that might impact what our recommendations are. Now, one of the main points of discussion that we went through, and there were some points of sort of disagreement, and there was a lot of agreement that we wanted the pedestrian experience to be the primary experience. That is the way it is laid out in the city ordinance that was passed unanimously, creating this new pedestrian street. We really feel like the pedestrian experience should be the prime experience. A minority of the people in the design committee felt like there maybe should be some allowance for bikes or scooters. So there's been some discussion about that. We'll be interested to hear if there are comments about that today. One of the reasons I chose this photo is it's one where the pedestrian can kind of go across all of these different areas, even though bikes and cars are allowed, but also because you can see these bollards here that protect bikers and pedestrians from cars, also can serve as potential bike storage. So that was another topic, and that came up is even if we didn't allow bikes, and when I say we, I mean the street didn't allow bikes, and making it pedestrian only, would we allow bikes to have sort of some public storage, and what that might look like? We'll talk about that in the recommendations. So this is not the only photo that shows this particular element, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight for the audience today is the usage of stone in conjunction with, and this is sort of old stone in conjunction with modern building materials, but also particularly in terms of the pedestrian walkway experience. So here you'll see some cobblestones at the edge, but smooth stone in the middle. And one of the things, both from a safety and ADA compliance perspective, the committee felt like there should be sort of smooth stone for walkability, for anyone that needs accommodation, to not have sort of a rough stone or cobblestone thing, but that might be something that we would want to incorporate in the materials design. Some of these are just to give you different examples in different contexts of the materials and the placemaking design. Here you see some lampposts, an actual public clock in the middle of it. Those are things that were discussed in the recommendations as well. Here, very clearly, a pedestrian-only type of experience. That does allow for wheelchairs, even though it is not completely smooth. You see that this is red brick with some stone alternation, and again, that is a common theme that we see in these successful streetscapes. We also see the temporary movable aspect of street furniture. This is obviously a lot wider than the 20 feet that this pedestrian street will be, but there will be one part of the Homestead assemblage that is expected to be wider than 20 feet. So one of the things that we didn't cover extensively in the recommendations, that if you all today are interested in and we could add to is ideas around programming. And so here I wanted to highlight that. Here you can see sort of a slightly different grade on the sidewalk. This obviously incorporates public transit, which is not the plan for this particular street. The other thing that's noticeable, and you've seen this in a couple of the other photos, is overhead there's these sort of thin wires that allow for signage. In this case, I think it's for the streetcars partly, but in a number of cases, those are just to have overhead decoration, and that is something that we could include in the recommendations. So we really went through a lot of discussion around this to get to the final second set of recommendations coming out of the design workshop, which I'll share with you at the end. I'm going to go through a few more kind of slides on the local materials and context. This is actually from Homestead Place today. It's covered over primarily by some disintegrating asphalt, unfortunately, which doesn't always make for great experience for bikes and for people who for whom that could be a safety hazard. But I did want to make sure that people knew what's there now. Historically, this was a sort of pale yellow brick that was in the Homestead Place. Okay, so here's just another example of what that would look like. I've been taking photos now for leading up to this design workshop for a lot of months. You can see me doing that here. Here's some more examples of different bricks that are used right in our community. So I think most people recognize the beacon here up top. This is from Baldwin Ave in Journal Square. So you see a lot of that in the community, not just in Homestead Place. And that was one of the potential materials that the committee liked. Here's another example. Probably most people will recognize this as well. It's the back side of the entrance to the Journal Square station, right next to the Kushner Tower. And you can see there's a fairly innovative type of design, a little bit more involved, and I think aesthetically pleasing than the concrete blocks that we see in the front of Journal Square, which is ironic since it's the back and it's for cars. But you can also see these embedded ground lights. So lighting was another aspect that we wanted to discuss, and you can see, the ability for bicycles to be here. This is obviously a lot wider than the 20 feet for the pedestrian passage. Here's another kind of local photo. This is large granite blocks. This is in front of the Court Building, if you don't recognize it, on Newark Ave. Here, just a juxtaposition of cobblestone with granite and other stone. You see the bollards here, which potentially could be parts of this. Plantings with trees and bicycle parking. Here you see another sort of slight central grade with drainage for water in this pedestrian passage. A couple of things that I think are relevant here. This is at World Trade Center, by the way, in New York. These are extremely tall towers, even taller, I think probably than the ones that we will see alternating along the Homestead Street. So that's notable because it's a little different than some of the other photos. You can see this will be bordered by very tall towers. Also, one of the things that came out of the recommendations was that the committee did not want to just see gray as a material choice. We wanted to see a little bit more color because a lot of new modern development is sort of gray and silver tones. So just calling that out. I don't know if anyone recognizes where this is. This is also from Jersey City. Here we looked at a different material. This is wood-like tile, and this is in fact leading up to the Jersey City Science Center in in Liberty State Park. So this is just another example. And we also talked about elements like the orientation of tiles, vertical, horizontal, what alignment they would have. This one I suspect many people will recognize, virtually everyone, in our own beloved General Square. Here we see poured concrete in sort of these large square formations. Also notable how they've done the trees in large planters and streetlights. Hexagon pavers and at least a non-gray granite here in this particular photo. Also juxtaposition of different materials. These are concrete bricks, so fairly easy to maintain, and you can see easy to do different colors. So I'm not going to go through all these in detail. I just wanted to give folks a really good sense. This is another option. You see this in Hamilton Park, but in the stamped concrete way of this fan arrangement. You see this commonly in France, for example. Also, this allows for some smooth stone for people who would need that instead of just the rough stone. Here's another example of, again, a sort of a yellow brick as a pedestrian material. We talked about things that would be a little bit more whimsical, like sort of wavy designs and things like that. So this is an example of one of those. Stamped, not just concrete, but asphalt is a common example. It has, it's fairly easy to maintain and replace. And you can see you can do things here in terms of the stamping that allows, a real clear contrast with the street. Because this particular pedestrian street is going to cross actual vehicular streets in 4 different places, Pavonia, Van Ruypen, Cottage, and it'll probably, I guess, end so just before Newark. The aspect of pedestrians crossing through vehicular areas is a really important one. We'll talk about that in the safety recommendations. Here's another example of that. You can see this is a raised crossing, different material, to make sure from a car perspective that they should be particularly attentive to pedestrians at these crossings. You can see the bollards too as another protection element.
Hey, Russell, can I jump in real quick?
Please.
In your recommendations, I feel like the crossings, but because there are active streets that go through here, Cottage, Van Ruypen, etc. Have you made comments about what the pedestrian throughway would look like there? Because I know, like for instance, downtown Grove Street, it's 2 plazas with like through traffic in the middle. And it always gets a little hairy when you get to that point in the pedestrian connection. Have you guys addressed that at all?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that was one of the things that there were lots of discussions and thoughts on from a safety perspective, and just from maintaining kind of the orientation for pedestrians as the primary audience that whose needs we would want to address in this particular case. So things that we discussed were a raised area in the street. That was actually a recommendation that we adopted out of the design workshop. One of the things that we talked about was potentially sort of street lighting, uplighting from the street. That was another one. We talked about potentially having some different textures here, so that as a car is crossed in advance of where the pedestrians would be crossing, they would hear on their wheels a different material in advance of that. Those would all be ways for the vehicles to signal, visually, auditorily, that, okay, I need to slow down. Thanks, and I can't see the comments coming through, Kevin, so please just jump in and stop me if you have any that you think would be relevant here. And I'm almost done with the visuals in these slides, so thanks for bearing with me on them.
Okay, yeah, I'll start collecting some comments and jump in if there's relevant questions for sure.
Great. So here we thought that lighting is going to be sort of a very critical element, particularly because natural lighting is going to be in many places kind of largely blocked out because of the height of the buildings. So we talked about having sconces. We talked about uplighting, which actually the committee decided that they didn't want to see. They preferred the sconces from the buildings. So these were just all these elements were things that we discussed in depth. The process that we went through was, as we looked at each one of them, it was approval voting. We looked at each element separately and to gain areas with the greatest amount of support from the committee. So now I want to present kind of the recommendations that we came to as part of the committee, and then and hopefully get a chance to see the comments from the audience today. So first one was, and this is a critical one, what are the materials that we would want to see used for the pedestrian passage, particularly mid-block? And they liked the idea that these would be sort of very durable materials without a huge amount of maintenance. So a developer might hear, okay, great, concrete or asphalt. Well, that was not what the committee wanted. In fact, those were the absolute last choices that we recommended against. The committee liked the idea of brick and or stone, or some combination of those two. It could be cobblestone, it could be slate slabs, it could be granite slabs. But if it were something that were more rough, that it should be used sort of on the side or as an accent, so that it would be safe for people who who needed a more stable and smooth material. Again, people like the idea of brick as part of it, particularly since that sort of pale yellow brick was part of the existing historical part of it. In terms of color, again, not just gray, not just sort of a somber coloration. And there wasn't any particular thought on whether any bricks or tiles should be in a particular orientation there. As I mentioned, one of the bigger areas of discussion was around sort of how do we accommodate bikes and scooters. We recognize that at the very least, people will be coming from other places with those. The committee did feel that it should be primarily pedestrian and foot traffic. That was part of the way that it was designed. And so some people felt strongly like that should be prohibited. Others said it's fine if you want to accommodate it in a small segment, like if there's like a particular track. So that's the way that our recommendations read. In terms of bicycle parking, again, there was the thought that even people might be walking their bicycles or scooters on this pedestrian passage, in which case you might want to provide some limited parking. On the other hand, that has some challenges because you don't want people just sort of leaving them forever. So that would be addressed in the operational aspects. Amenities. So street furniture was one that was an interesting one, and people had different opinions here. Some people felt like fixed seating would be great, a few benches. Some people, I want to say it was Sonia, but someone had the great idea of a sort of a stepped permanent area where people at various heights could climb onto, which I'm calling a riser here. So there were some different ideas here. Other people felt like, oh, you know what, as long it's really important and healthy to have some portable chairs that the cafe that is planned for one of the buildings would have. So we welcome any ideas on street furniture. Please put those in the chat or send them to me after. I'll show you how you can do that in just a moment. Greenery was another amenity that we felt like there should definitely be some greenery. Because of the relatively narrow width of the passage, trees felt like they probably were not in scope, at least full size trees. So we recommended for sort of other types of vegetation. We discussed whether we would want to have something like a fountain, which can be part of placemaking, or other kind of, a wall of water, things of that nature. And it just seemed like that to the committee might be a little bit too complicated to maintain in a really beautiful way. That's something that we've seen, obviously, historically in Journal Square Plaza and other places. And so that was recommended against just from a practical perspective from upkeep. Okay. Also, timekeeping feature, meaning like a public clock of some type. This was considered nice to have, not a critical thing. It might be nice aligned with the hotel that is planned eventually to be at the corner of the Homestead pedestrian passage and Newark. And last recommendation here was around lighting and safety. So Kevin, to your question around the passage for pedestrians across these vehicular streets. So we recommend for raised passage across them, and that the surface could be the same as the pedestrian, but in advance of that, as mentioned, there could be some clues, both visual in terms of coloration on the street and or auditory, that would make sure that cars would know they need to slow down. Okay. All right, so last recommendation was just that we like the idea of some kind of waste receptacles for the audience. So I'm really interested to hear additional suggestions from this audience. Kevin, if you want to share any that have come in through the chat, fantastic. Great. You can also email me directly, russell_dover@yahoo.com. We do want to get those fairly soon so that we can put these recommendations out to the developer and the city so that they can start the planning of this, and meet with their design and architecture firm. And then the last thing, Kevin, I don't know if this is something that you're able to do, but I put together a survey link that will allow us to know if you're comfortable with the recommendations that we've put together as a committee. These will not be, these are not final yet. We will incorporate everything that came out of today, but we also want to make sure that we're on track with the larger association, that you're comfortable with the process and the recommendations themselves as they stand now, and the direction that we're taking. So, Kevin, is it possible to share that?
Do you have a link for that now?
I might be able to grab that for you.
If you put it in the private chat, I can share it in the public chat.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of talking from me. I appreciate everyone's time, and open to any questions or comments.
Okay. I just put Russell's email address on the screen. If you guys have feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, right? I think you're open for it all.
Absolutely.
Good. I'm going to jump through. We only have a few minutes. It's almost noon, so I'm going to jump through a few comments real quick. The first one is from Namdar, who is asking, are there retail and shopping malls planned along this pedestrian walkway?
So the current plan is that there would be some retail space, but I think we'd love to see more retail space and a sort of a more shopping, but they haven't allowed for a lot of retail space in the current plans. It's mostly residential apartments, rentals.
We had a request from Ryan for more Unipod secure bike storage, which is the, if you guys aren't familiar with it, that's the bike storage solution that is now on the Journal Square Plaza. It's not open like a bike rack. It is a secured bike facility where you can actually lock up your bike for a day. It helps prevent the problem of bikes being locked up permanently and then becoming a nuisance. So we'll include that request in the feedback. Let me see what else comments we have from the group. Okay, Russell just sent me the SurveyMonkey link. So if you guys have more comments, more feedback, I am now sharing that link Pardon me. I am sharing that. You're going to see it in the comments on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Chris says, if you'd like to be more involved or in this and other development around Journal Square, join the CAP committee. I am going to reinforce that message, JSQCA.com. Sign up, become a member, join the CAP committee. Always an interesting conversation. We had a great presentation the other night about the One Journal Square project, which is a big transformative project in our community. I got a question from Hot Soup here. Has the potential stalling of the hotel, which is at the north end of the Homestead walkway, I believe, has that affected the plans here at all, or is that a separate developer?
So that was supposed to be a separate developer, not Namdar Group. Namdar Group did bid on that, and they did not win that bid, is my understanding. I think the funding for the developer that got the bid has, stalled or been problematic, and therefore, what will ultimately happen with the hotel development at the corner of Newark and the new pedestrian street is, I think, an open question at this point.
Okay. I know Mandar had a question about a water element, and I think I read that in your notes elsewhere. Do you want to talk about what the committee said about water elements? You there, Russell?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep, we're good. We're good.
Still? Good. Yeah, so this was one where we were excited to sort of present some options around, again, just from a placemaking perspective. Could be a fountain, it could be, a waterfall along the wall, it could be something like that. And again, from an upkeep perspective, there was concern that it would be challenging. Now that's a conversation that we can have with the developer. But I think that they're probably going to want to keep it more simple too. So we felt like our recommendations should be more focused on things that we felt stronger about. But that was the discussion that we had, open to any different time.
Cool. All right. I think that's going to conclude it. Conclude the conversation here. Obviously, you can keep the conversation going in the chat. And it's funny, I'm asking for your feedback, but I'm seeing a lot of side conversations go back and forth, which is great because normally you lose that in a virtual environment. But I love to see the community still continuing to connect. Maybe we're not having coffee for 30 minutes after the meeting's over, but we're still able to have our side conversations. But yeah, the feedback is still open. The link is in the chat comments below. Russell's email address I will put up on the screen again. You can pause the video here and write it down. So if you have any questions, feedback, good, bad, otherwise you can go back and rewatch the presentation if you saw something that you had questions about. And then get in touch with Russell or get in touch with us, hello@jsqca.com. We'll point you in the right direction. So
yeah, and in that survey link, I should add, we want to make sure that that you're comfortable with kind of the direction that we're taking, but also there's an open field for you to provide any additional comments. So please do go to that survey link.
I have one more comment. It's come up twice in the chat. Is there an opportunity for a zip line between the buildings like in Old Las Vegas?
That would be a very distinctive element of the plan. And we wanted this to be a destination that would make it a certain type of destination.
Absolutely. We're adventurous people here in Journal Square, so it makes sense.
Right.
All right. Thank you very much, Russell. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks to you.
All right. So let me tidy up my screen a little bit. So we're going to wind down the meeting now. I have a few announcements I just want to say. I'm going to bring Bill back. He can talk about the Green Committee this week. But I just want to get out some announcements from our different committees. Again, I'm going to make another pitch for membership. JSQCA.com. You can sign up, become a member, pay your dues. The dues you pay now count all the way through 2021. So if you're an existing member, you need to renew. I don't think I've renewed yet. I'm going to go do it right after this meeting. And if you're a new member, you want to get involved, you want to sign up for committees, that's the best place to do it. You know, we're paying for the service. You know, there's a lot of challenges around COVID. You know, your support really helps make these things possible, helps us continue to bring these speakers and have an impact in our community. Obviously, there's a lot of important projects, whether it's Homestead, whether it's the Essex-Hudson Greenway, JC Master Plan, sustainability. We want to be a part of all of these things, and your membership, your support helps us have an impact. You know, when we can go say we have 100 members, we have 200 members, we have 3,000 members, why not, right? So again, JSQCA.com. The first committee report I want to make is about the Seniors Committee. As I mentioned last month, Marianne moved out of our community, so she's no longer able to chair the Seniors Committee, Marianne Von Roth. If anybody's interested in getting involved, obviously this is a time of great need. We were able to have a really good impact with seniors in our community. If anybody wants to get involved with that, please reach out to me, hello@JSQCA.com. You know, we're always looking for volunteers. If you want to get involved with any other committees, things like that, please let me know. I have a message from Renee with the Clean Committee. They have been doing walking tours of our community, identifying problem properties, identifying places for improvement, submitting a lot of see-click-fix requests. They have another walking tour Tuesday, November 17th at 11 a.m. Tuesday, November 17th at 11 a.m. They're meeting at the corner of Sip and Bergen. I assume that's going to be right by the Dunkin' Donuts there in Journal Square. They're going to be covering from Sip to Highland, Bergen to JFK Boulevard. So that little northeast corner there between Bergen and JFK, Highland, Sip. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out that neighborhood, doing a walking tour, submitting opportunities for improvement. The city's been really responsive to our walking tours when we submit see-click-fix requests. I mean, they can always be more responsive, but you know, it's a good way to bring attention and to use the community association to address issues on your block that are important to you. That's why we're here. You know, we want to amplify voices that are trying to make the community better. Bill, do you want to come on and tell us about the Green Committee meeting this week?
Yeah, well, just a reminder, as I mentioned earlier, but again, for people who may support, we are having a meeting of the Green Committee Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. and we'll be following up with a lot of the issues that we discussed tonight. And also Thursday evening, the Jersey City Environmental Commission is holding this meeting on single-use plastic. So if you email hello@JSQCA.com, I can provide the information about that.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And I just want to let you guys know our next scheduled meeting is for December 12th. Traditionally, we have done a holiday party for our December meeting in lieu of having speakers. We currently don't have any speakers finalized. Obviously, with COVID restrictions, we're not going to be having an in-person holiday party this year. Like I said, we don't have any speakers finalized. I would love to get feedback from the group as to what you guys would like to do for the December meeting. Perhaps another opportunity for a social event. A members only meeting is something we usually do every year. We have not yet done it this year. We're working on a member survey that we would like to send out to solicit your feedback. That's always important. I think it's more important now that so much has changed. Our format has changed. Our needs as a community have changed. So we're going to send that out. But I would love to get your suggestions for what you would like to do for the December meeting, as well as any other future speakers or topics. You know, we're pretty good at getting speakers. People are receptive when we reach out to them. But I would really want to know what the members want to, who they want to hear from and what they want to hear about, because we want meetings that are useful to all of you, to the topics that you guys are interested in and receptive to. So with that, I'm going to conclude the November meeting. I thank you all for joining us. I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving. We've got a lot to be thankful for in this moment. And thank you very much. See you in December. Have a good weekend, everybody.